So we are officially recording now. Welcome to this TED-style training masterclass. My name's Sarah Lloyd-Hughes, and over the next hour, I am thrilled to be taking a great group of live people and a whole load of people on the recording through the process of harnessing the TED format of public speaking for business success. So for those of you who haven't met me in the past, I am founder and CEO of Ginger Public Speaking. I'm a TEDx speaker myself many years ago now, and I have coached and supported many hundreds now of TEDx speakers and also speakers who have gone on to deliver talks of a very similar format at conferences, and those who have used the format and the style of TED speaking for great benefit in their business. I'm also author of this book, How to Be Brilliant at Public Speaking, that you can see there, which is from Pearson. And Ginger has been going for more than 10 years now. We're a team based in London, and we also have an office in New York. And one of our specialist areas is TED-style speaker training, which very much fits with our mantra and our tagline of speak, lead, change. We see public speaking as an act of leadership. It's leadership development, but it's also development of your ideas in order to influence change within your company, within your industry, and beyond. So I'm really excited to have a short amount of time with you this afternoon or this morning if you're in the States, to talk you through some of the work and some of the strategies that we put behind our TED-style work. And towards the end of this afternoon, I will no doubt have space for questions and tell you a little bit more about how to work with us if you'd like to know some more. A few words before we get officially cracking on the way that I like to run these days, webinars. I love interaction. I don't love talking at myself for a huge amount of time. So I really encourage you to put in comments and reactions to what I'm saying in the webinar chat. A little bit of encouragement is always good for a public speaker. And I also encourage you to ask questions as we go along so that I can make this as relevant as possible to you. So don't wait until the end. In that spirit, whilst I start with my introduction, what I'd love to know is what is your personal connection to TED-style speaking? Are you interested in doing a TED talk? Have you done one? Is it a business question that you have surrounding the TED style of speaking? So what can you tell me about where you're at with TED-style speaking so that I can make this as relevant for you as possible? If you can tap that into the webinar chat, I'll get to as many of those comments as I can. Whilst you're tapping away, I'm going to introduce to you, I suppose I'll start with the end in mind. This is a group of incredible ladies, some of whom will be connected to the ladies, to folks on the line today, who I suppose are one example of the work that we do with TED-style speaking. This is 12 future female leaders who late last year, we took through our TED-style training. And I wanted to show you what's possible in a short space of time. They came into the room in the first training, most of them looking kind of terrified. And when we asked them what their thought leadership is and what their idea worth spreading in a TED style was, most of them gave us a blank look and said, oh, I don't really know. Because so many of us have not really thought about what our thought leadership is, particularly if we work within big companies. Those of us who work for ourselves maybe a little bit more, but certainly these ladies hadn't really ever been asked or really encouraged to have a professional piece of thinking that they could put their attention to and build their profile around. 4 months later, this is them at an industry showcase where they've all just delivered a 10-minute TED-style talk to an audience of 400 people. And the talks are online. You can have a look at them. Just look for the Future Female Leaders program. They are brilliant talks. They're short talks, and they're really, really compelling talks. So the question that I'd like to answer today is how did they go from being utterly terrified to being absolute TED style speaking rock stars? And that's what I hope to show you today. I'm going to come to the chat here. Whoa, thank you for all of your comments. Jenny's ended up doing lots of public speaking in her work, but never been able to put in place training for yourself to do it properly. I resonate with that. A lot of people do talking as something that they're just asked to do, but wonder whether or not they're doing it in a way that's really effective. Laura, hello, Laura has been promoted, needs to do more presentations, would love to get better knowledge on how to do it successfully. You're in the right place. Mega, business requirement in your role, yep. Heather often does TED-style talks with her internal departments, on stage a lot, like it. So great. If you've got any tips as you go of what's worked for you, then please add them in as well. I've got one perspective, but I'm sure there are many others as well. A. Brown, is that Ali? I'm not sure, quite sure. Bringing TED techniques into how I present or talk in business meetings to increase the influence in what I say, and possibly doing an actual TED talk. Great. So looking for influence techniques, and that is, I think, a really strong expectation to take from today. Janet would like to use opportunities that present for me to speak, but at the moment you hold yourself back, and I'm sure many resonate. Okay, loads of other comments here. I'll just zip down to Hadmat. Never did a TED talk either, but I think public speaking is important. Also for introverted people, I absolutely agree. And what I'd like to say on that point is that, you know, that for me, there's no right or wrong personality in speaking. The ginger approach is really not to say, here is a perfect public speaker, and here are all the reasons why you need to change in order to be like that. What I love, and we'll see this later, about TED-style speaking is that you've got people from all sorts of different personalities speaking up in a way that is true to their style, and that's what I hope for you too. Okay, great. Rika would like to be less terrified. Remy, hello Remy, long time no speak to you as well. Enjoy speaking, being asked to do more, so you'd like to hone your skills. Kerned, looking to build confidence, storytelling, loads in there, and sorry I can't get to you all just now, but we will hopefully as we come through the course of the session. So this is the plan. This is the plan for the next 50 minutes or so. We're going to have a quick look at the relevance of the TED style for business, so that you can see that this is not just some kind of fad that is relevant to conference speaking, but not particularly to your daily life. So we'll look into that in just a second. I'm going to teach you my top 3 lessons to learn from TED. Now, this is me condensing effectively a 4-month program that, like we ran for those 12 ladies I just showed you, into the course of about half an hour or 40, 45 minutes. So I'm going to give you the high-level principles, and I'm going to give you as much value as I possibly can during this time. And we're also, by the end of the session, going to give you some thoughts about how to start on your own TED-style talk, if that is what you're seeking to do, or just how to think about your own ideas for your business communications in a way that is more TED-tastic. Great, so let's jump in and ask ourselves, is the TED style relevant to business? Yes or no in the webinar chat, please. I'm imagining that you're all going to say pretty much yes, because you're here, but it's always good to ask. So I think from my perspective, there are 3 key areas of relevance. Janet certainly thinks so, I agree, Janet. First of all is developing your thought leadership. You know, now more than ever, business and individuals within business have opportunities to raise their profile through the power of ideas and innovations that you're working on a daily basis. Now, rather than the traditional approach of waiting for your PR team to have more this top-down approach to messaging, to put out a single corporate message or a campaign, we've got the opportunity of platforms like LinkedIn, to get immediate opportunities to build relationships, to build our own credibility as thought leaders. The problem is that most of us have a ton of insights, but we don't spend the time to unpick that. And what I normally see more than ever is people thinking they have nothing to share, or thinking that they've got so many different things to share, but either way, not being able to put their finger on the idea that is worth spreading. So often we don't know where to start with developing our thought leadership. And I'm glad so many of you on the chat think, yes, there is relevance of TED to business. So we're going to show you, I hope, how it doesn't need to take a heap of time to develop an idea that has the TED-style essence and that can really start to change your way of thinking about yourself as a thought leader. We know that thought leaders get better visibility. We know that there's a sort of premium to be attracted in terms of chargeable rates or in terms of salary for people who are experts. So there's loads of incentives for developing thought leadership. And wouldn't we rather have more quality thinking out in the world than just more opinions and outrage? So I think that's definitely something that TED gives to the world, quality information rather than scaremongering and shouting at each other. The next one is the idea that actually TED-style speaking, or the essence of the TED approach, can sharpen success of your sales processes. So TED speaking is really great for selling, or actually anything where you need to bring people alongside your idea or your perspective without doing that hardcore, classic, and slightly old-fashioned, very old-fashioned way of just telling people why they should buy from you. Why? Because TED forces you, or the TED style forces you to be really clear, brief, and critically, I think it humanizes communication in a way that really helps people to trust you rather than just know only about you. So it's that classic sales idea of knowing, liking, and trusting a person that you then purchase from, rather than just simply looking at a list of benefits to a service. So I think building trust is absolutely key, particularly these days, if we want to follow a company or indeed a manager or a leader within an organization. And TED have some really fantastic principles that help build trust and buy-in from others in terms of what you say and also how you say it. Taya is excited about storytelling, yes, and you're a fantastic storyteller yourself, my dear. And also then the third benefit to business is certainly showcasing diverse voices. And, you know, a lot of the clients that we work with these days are really eager to get voices of more women out there into the workplace and beyond. And the format of TED style speaking somehow, I think, is really effective for showcasing diverse voices. Brief, again, and put in a way that is a challenge, but people are more willing to listen to ideas that are brief and well constructed rather than Castro-style long rants, which I think are a thing of the past. Equally, those diverse voices might be people from more technical backgrounds, and we've done a lot of work with people who don't normally get their voices heard, either because, as someone mentioned before, they're introvert, or because their ideas are kind of so impenetrable that they don't know how to translate them into a way that other people could understand. And that's a thread that we'll talk a little bit about as we go along this afternoon. Okay, so I hope we're all convinced that there is a great business case for TED style speaking. Let's zip into 3 key areas and key lessons to learn from TED. The first one then, we start at the beginning, and that fantastic, useful TED concept, having an idea worth spreading, is something that I find deeply, deeply enriching and exciting. And I'm going to give you 3 principles around this, and then I'm going to play a little game with you. So you better pay attention to make sure that you score 100% in this game in a moment. What actually makes an idea worth spreading? And here I like to ask myself, what are the ideas that I notice? You know, if I'm going about my daily life, and we have one estimate is between 3 and 1,000 marketing messages every single day trying to vie for our attention, from online advertising to branding in situ to media messages on more traditional types of media. So how can it be that your idea, your one little idea, is the one that other people take on and remember and ideally act upon in some way? That takes a bit of time and thinking. So I'm not going to be able to tell you exactly how to make your idea worth spreading today, but what I can do is give you some principles to think about to then start the process of refining and honing your ideas. The first one, I think this is really important, is that your idea needs to press on some kind of audience need. Translated as, it needs to be useful. What problems are you seeking to solve for other people? How do you get over there to their needs rather than getting stuck in only what it is that you want to say? So this is really about empathy, sitting in the audience's mindset and seeking to be what I call a servant speaker, a servant leader who aims to add value rather than an ego-driven leader or speaker who is simply talking because you've got a bit of airtime and let me grab it as much as I possibly can. I wonder if you can think of a TED Talk, a famous TED Talk that has particularly stuck in your mind because it's been useful, one that you have maybe even passed on. If you've got an example, put it in the chat below. I've got a couple of examples. One is Amy Cuddy's power posing, one of the most popular TED Talks of all time so far. It is so useful because you can pass it on, and basically anyone who has a situation where they might feel nervous and needing more power can quickly hear from someone who's watched that talk, do the power posing, and it can be passed on really, really quickly. Amy Cuddy, yes, Sarah just mentioned that. Remy's pointed out Ken Robinson's education one. Yeah, and tell me, Remy, why was that, what need was that pressing on from you? Possibly because you're a mum. The other one that came to my mind that I have heard countless people over the years quote is Simon Sinek's Start With Why piece, and most of you perhaps will have seen it, the why, what, and how circle. And for anyone who has the need to communicate in a way that makes their business or project more successful, that little diagram is of high value. Janet's pointed to the Susan Cain Power of Introverts piece. Yes, I mean, certainly if you're an introvert, that was a turning point moment that validated that perspective. And wow, what a great piece there. Angela Duckworth on vulnerability. I don't know that one. I know the Brene Brown one on vulnerability. That one certainly has been passed on an awful lot and seen huge amounts of use. And yeah, grit, passion, and perseverance. And Angela, maybe that was the Angela one. So yeah, those things, those ideas that we see as urgent or vital or crucial to our life in some way will be retained. The second thought, and I think all of the ideas that we've just shared in the chat and more apply to this characteristic, is simplicity without the idea being dumb. It's very easy, or comparatively easy, to be complex and clever. My brother is a physicist, and when he goes to his industry conferences, he says it's almost like a competition between normally gentlemen with white hair coming out of their noses, trying to see how impenetrable they can make their idea, because the more complex their idea is, the more intelligent they must be as an academic. Well, having worked with a load of academics myself, and particularly one piece of work that springs to mind was preparing academics to speak at the World Economic Forum at Davos. They are, if you can only communicate in a language that is complex and to the point of the experts, then you're not going to influence anyone outside the group that already kind of knows about what you're trying to say. And that might be your decision to only focus on technical specialists, but I'd say we can make our ideas much more relevant to many more people if we de-jargon. And that's the same for those of you who work in whichever professional, but I'm going to pick on coaches here because I am one myself and trained as one. And I see a lot of coaching jargon language, like be in the room with and let me connect with you and so on. Language that is actually jargon in your terms that other people don't understand. So it might seem like common sense language to you, but it still needs simplifying and translating into the language that others can grasp and take on for it to feel simple for them. Whilst, of course, we're not looking to dumb down your ideas. The other piece in this is that, of course, that we're desperate when we do get a moment in the spotlight to put across as many ideas as we possibly can. And here's where, again, that brilliant innovation from TED of saying you've got one idea and you've got up to 20 minutes or up to 18 minutes originally with TED. Although I think that 18 minutes these days is even too long for a message. If you can't say it in a sentence, it's very, very difficult to say it effectively in any length of time. So that's really one of those first things that you need to be doing. Like, can you write your idea down in a sentence? And if you can, is that sentence pressing on an audience's need? Is it a useful concept? Is it an idea that will be taken and spread? And then the third piece to the jigsaw puzzle with your idea is what I call making your idea on the right edge of crazy. So for an idea to spread, it has to have a little edge that causes it to be remembered. If you think about advertising, it's the ideas within advertising that are a little bit strange, that the advert is not doing the same as everybody else, that we pick up and we pass on. I always remember those awful "What's up" adverts from, I can't remember what it was even advertising, but I remember the "What's up" and things like that go viral because they're a little bit crazy and possibly annoying. We want to make sure that you're not too far down that end of the crazy spectrum that you dissolve all of your professional credibility, but we do want to make sure that the ideas are sufficiently different and sufficiently weird for people to notice them. Somebody, I think it was Remy, mentioned the Ken Robinson, very, very, very popular, top viewed TED Talk, that Schools Kill Creativity. And in that, there's this lovely little moment, many of you will have seen it, where there's a girl who says she's drawing God. And the teacher says, oh, but nobody knows what God looks like. And the little girl says, well, they will in a minute. And I just think that's a beautiful and crazy and funny little story. And because of its strangeness, it's memorable. And because of its humor as well, it's memorable. Pink elephants. I'm assuming you mean Dumbo and pink elephants there, Remy. Otherwise, I'm not on the same page as you. So that would be the right edge of crazy, to emphasize Ken Robinson's message of bringing creativity into schools. But what wouldn't be the right edge of crazy if he had stripped naked and ran around stage? So we're looking for the right edge of crazy, but not too far. And normally I'd say with our ideas, we don't go far enough for fear of embarrassing ourselves to our peers. Okay, so I hope that all makes sense. We're looking for ideas worth spreading that are the right edge of crazy. And with that in mind, we're going to play a little game. We are going to play TED or Dead. Can you spot, I'm sure you can you spot the difference between an industry conference title of an event, of a talk, versus some of the more popular but perhaps less known TED Talks that exist? Now, I'm not saying that the idea in your talk is the same as the title, but this is just a way for us to to play with the concepts that I've just given you and to test them out. So, everyone to your chat, tell me, which do you think is TED and which do you think is dead? So I'm going to give you one by one a title, and then you're going to shout out on the chat, TED or Dead. This is so much fun. Okay, the first one is Forging Win-Win Relationships to Improve Patient Outcomes. TED or Dead? Yes, everyone's saying dead. Dead, 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 dead. Nobody going to go for TED? No, don't like that? Give me some reasoning why. Yes, that's definitely dead. I mean, this is pulled from an industry conference in healthcare. In fact, all of these are in healthcare. And it's just full of meaningless jargon words, isn't it? I hope you can all see that it doesn't really captivate you when words are conceptual. We can't really see them. And it is utterly, utterly meaningless. Emma says it sounds boring, horrible business jargon. Absolutely agree. Doctors make mistakes. Next one. Can we talk about that? Ted or dead? Ted. Oh, you're so good. Ted. Yeah, and give me some reasons why that is Ted. That is Brian Goldman's TED, very good TED Talk. It's 1.6 million views. It's edgy, it's human, it's simple and true, simple, honest, and short. Notice the language that's being used. It's controversial, thank you, Heather, controversial enough, provocative in some way. And it actually does poke at a need for most of us that makes us think, like, oh, crikey, that is something that I hadn't really thought about, and certainly I hadn't thought about until I watched his TED Talk and thought it produced some very, very relevant insights. Next one, what if our healthcare systems kept us healthy? Ted or dead? Ted. Yes. You're getting the hang of this. Yeah, you're absolutely right. What if our healthcare systems kept us healthy? That is Ted. That is Rebecca Oni, 1.2 million views. The business case, health and productivity, a two-way street. Dead. Carol's visibly offended by this particular one. Yes, dead. Absolutely, you're totally right. All right, we've got a metaphor in it, a two-way street, but that's such a cliche, and we can surely do better. Whenever anybody, puts the title, the most exciting thing that it should be encapsulated is that it's a business case. It's a little bit of a snore fest. Surely there's a better way that we can communicate this, and we could debate if we had longer about some better ways to phrase these pieces. Next one, let's try this one. Next generation interventional technologies, a new dawn for spine. Ted or dead? Oh, it's not possible to trick you. Dead as a dodo. Everyone agrees it's pretty darn dead, and I absolutely agree with you. It's a mouthful. I think there's some light at the end of the tunnel. A new dawn for spine could be the start of an idea worth spreading, but in itself, it wouldn't really mean anything. So that concept needs considerably more work for it to be compelling. Final one. Ted or dead, what we didn't know about penis anatomy. Ted, yes, well done everyone. Anything to do with penises is always going to get people's attention, and that is very much Ted. So here we go. Here are our little cluster of TED titles, and I want you just to look at these, take a screenshot if you want, and reflect on not necessarily the titles in your talk. The titles are one thing, but the idea that you get to put behind your expertise. How can you challenge yourself to be that bit more bold and edgy in the way that you communicate about your concept? That's my challenge to you. Okay, next up, we're rolling through to part 2, where we're going to look at the second key principle of TED-style speaking. So what I'm going to give you here is a process that normally takes many days to work through in detail, but is on the surface very, very simple. So this is almost like level 1 of a structure that probably has 3 different depths of level for us. And it's something that you can use straight away, but the richness comes when you work it through with other people and test it out. So let's work through this next section with a couple of your speaking themes in mind. What I'd love you to do is, if you've got a theme that you're working on right now for a talk, just a few of you to put some of those topics into the chat box. And meanwhile, I'll answer Brigitte's question. they're all questions, is that relevant? You're referring to the topic, the titles. I think the relevance of a question is that it already encourages and invites response to a question. And the best TED Talks are not necessarily questions, but it just happens that these three are. It's just a great way to get your audience engaged and thinking. Okay, so thank you very much. So we've got a few inputs here. So Emma, how to get the most out of your veg plot for the least effort. Nice. I like that. I do like that. And I love the effort bit. Being a reluctant gardener myself, that definitely has resonance. Remy celebrating women. Oh, hi, Joe. Joe Stansfield is talking about a talk she's starting on work today is from women in tech to engineer in HR. Nice, nice contrast, like it. Quantum learning machines in healthcare application. Vika, how to make that sexy? I've no idea what that is. Tell me a little bit more about that. Let's see what we can manage with at least one, or hopefully a few of these as we go. So let me just frame for you really quickly the structure of a talk. And what I'd like to say here is there are many, many different approaches to writing a talk. I think the one that is least helpful to most people is simply writing it out, because all you do is you get caught up in your own chain of thinking, and your ideas may not be shaped in a way that's coherent for the audience. So here is a shape for your thinking that is based on, you can see it's a sort of story arc. It's based on the hero's journey methodology, but unpacked and massively simplified for public speaking. And this is what we've been using for over a decade to visually map out the structure of a speaker's talk, and to help people to empower themselves to think about their structure, rather than having step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 20, step 30, and so on. So have a look at this structure. Obviously, it looks a bit like a mountain, like the profile of a mountain. And once we've found our idea worth spreading, you can consider that as being the summit of your mountain, the aim that you're seeking to achieve. Now, if you know which mountain you're trying to climb in a mountain range, you're much more likely to get to the top. So you're already starting out in a really, really good mindset if you know with clarity what you're trying to achieve from your talk, and we're going to come back to that in a second, versus most talks which particularly in the business world are akin to wandering off into the Himalayas and seeing where you end up. You know, if we just spend those few minutes, even if it's 30 seconds in advance of a very spontaneous talk, asking what do you want to achieve, that's going to make a way better talk. And once you've got this shape in mind, and I'll unpick the 3 different main components of this step by step, but if you have a shape of a talk rather than a whole ream of paper with words on it, then you're more able to edit for balance within the structure of the talk. You're better able to understand where does the color need to go. And if you need to reduce or increase the length of your talk, you also know the skeleton of your talk that is the most important elements, rather than just trying to cut out, oh, I don't like that story, or that bit has to stay. So let's have a little look at the starting point, and let's go to Vika's quite challenging topic, just because it is the most challenging one. The start point for any talk really is, what do the audience know right now, and what's the problem that you want to address? So if we look at quantum learning machines in healthcare application, if it's a public audience, then I'm going to play the role of the general public and go, I have no idea what that is. Can you, Vika, just explain to us briefly what it is? And also, can you explain what the starting point for your audience, whoever they may be, is? So what do they think currently about quantum learning machines in healthcare application? Do they know what that is? Are they completely unaware, or is it really old news for them, but they just don't want to use it? What are the problems that you want to address? They don't know much about it, so it's a new thing for them. Great. So you might like to have your starting point of what is the alternative to that, or what is the outdated, old-fashioned thing that you're hoping to replace with your quantum learning machines? Or what is the problem or the series of problems that is not currently being addressed because quantum learning machines are not fully or not at all integrated into healthcare right now? I hope I'm making sense. So that's where you start with a talk. You really look to set up the context, the old story, which is meeting the audience where they are currently at. And then from there, you can identify what the problem is with that place from which we can move. Let me see if I can get another example out for you. Emma, how to get the most out of your veg plot for the least effort. So I think I can speak a bit more on this one from a kind of literal perspective for myself. I think we could certainly say that the audience know that vegetables come from the ground. We agree that somebody has to grow them, and we agree that some people like to grow them in their veg plots, whether that's within their garden or an allotment. So you might say some of this stuff as context. It's sometimes important to say the very simple stuff at the beginning to make sure everyone's on the same page as you. But the start there, I think it would sound like the desire to grow vegetables, but the desire for it to take very limited amounts of effort and time. Probably, I'm guessing, in the context of most of us having busy lives, potentially families, potentially not being skilled gardeners, and yet wanting to get, or maybe not even very much space if we live in a city. So those things would typically constitute some of your starting points. I hope you understand, folks, as I'm bringing these up, examples alive, that you're looking to create resonance and connection to your audience and threads that sit with them as making sense, but you're also looking to identify problems that you can then go on to solve with them. And ideally, the problems that you identify, you have the solution to. Remy, this is the topic requested for International Women's Day, celebrating women. So I think where I would start with celebrating women is naturally, at least the thought process of what is the way in which we're not celebrating women right now, and at least some context for the need to celebrate women. So more examples will come as we go. Let's just then have a look at the next phase. So we know our start points, we know our end points, because we've got an idea of the message that we want to get across. So this is where we really spend time thinking, okay, at the end, I want a certain change in thought or behavior or knowledge that I want to pass on to the audience. Typically, this is your idea worth spreading. So you're trying to get people from wherever it is they are right now to realizing, oh, I don't know, Emma, can I grow a carrot in my chimney? Probably not, but that's a bit of a crazy idea that might get people's attention. Or what is it that you want to convince them of, and what is the message that you want to leave them of? So you're starting to shape out your talk by understanding what the beginning is and what the end is, and you might consider this to be a little bit like post-it notes. Literally, post-it notes are really helpful in sketching out your talk. And from there, the next step is naturally to fill in the gaps. But let's see if we've got another example. From women in tech to engineer in HR. So I think, Joe, you've kind of written your talk in that title, in a way. This sounds like a journey that would be the starting point from women in tech, and the end point would be engineer in HR. And at the same time, there are multiple layers going on within your message, right? So you've got, this is my personal story, but then you've got, this is the universal story that you're trying to use your story to represent. So two different levels. Here is me, but also being aware of, and this is what it means for the wider population. Yeah. Okay, so you've already got that one. Fantastic with your brilliant brain. So then the next bit is just bridging those two. These are two opposite ends of a chasm, and now we're putting a bridge from one side to the other. And very simply, you might think about 3 key steps of your argument that bring us from that perspective to that perspective. So where are we in my notes? This is where you often, but not always, let's not say that this has to be 3 chunks, but 3 chunks are a really beneficial number both for your audience to remember your 3 main points and for you to remember, so that you don't have to rely constantly on your own notes, but that you can really think through the chunks and the words associated with them rather than learning your lines as such. And this is where you're going to start to use a whole load of evidence for the process that you're taking people on. It could be 3 different pieces of literal evidence, like quantitative evidence, facts, data. But I think don't underestimate the importance of the anecdotal evidence that comes from stories, because really we can tell people that an idea is a good one, but unless we show them, they don't really take on the idea to be theirs. So I'm going to show you a few ideas in a moment around how you might bring your talk alive with all sorts of different richness. But the essence here is to think about the main component pieces. What's the beginning of your talk? What's the end? So problems through to solutions, and the 3 stepping stones are your way of edging us in our thinking as an audience closer to your perspective. So hopefully you can see how this is like the 3 best-selling arguments that you have for your idea, rather than just 3 bits that you wanted to say. The more intentional you can make them, the better. And of course, there's loads more to say about that section, but not in a short session like today. Okay, the things that you can put into that section, and the things in general to make your talk memorable and pass-onable, to really make your idea spread to others. There are many, but some of the key things that I would talk through for you are this. Stories, we know most of us the power of storytelling. One example from my recent experience as a data specialist who wanted to bring her story of making invisible people visible, and she works in development. She knows that the data doesn't represent many millions of people around the world, and if the data doesn't represent them, then we can't make financial and development orientated products like healthcare to better their life experience. So she was traditionally telling, just giving facts and data, and wondering why it wasn't influencing as much. She developed with me a little story about a boy on a train in India, sweeping monsoon rain out of the train. And this was an experience that she had in her 20s that had caused her to think, wow, like that little boy, he looked to her to be about 3 or 4 years old. They were going on hundreds of miles worth of train journey, and she had no idea if anyone knew who this boy was, if he was going to be safe. Effectively, he was invisible. And she told this little story at, I think it was the World Data Conference, which is like the hub of her industry and the people that she wanted to influence. And she set the tone for the entire conference. You know, everybody was referring back to her and her story as a result of daring to tell a story. So for her, it seemed crazy to tell a story because she's such a data person and didn't want to seem stupid for telling a story. But actually, everybody in the room resonated and really appreciated it. So the power of stories persists. Unique language. Thanks for a great story about a story, it was. Another really important device is your choice of language. And here my colleague Helen Thompson-Whiteside talks a lot about coining your term, like what is the landscape of language that you are consciously deciding to make yours. So finding specific language that's yours and then using it differentiates you from everybody else who's talking about similar things. Many thousands of coaches have talked about finding your purpose as a human being or as an organization, but it was Simon Sinek with Start With Why that became the massive best-selling author for having such a precise set of language. And also in his TED Talk, he says 7 times, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So once you've found your language, using it and using it again and using it again is the challenge. And I know it's a challenge because I've had clients say to me, well, God, I can't keep saying it, can I? But when you're bold enough to repeat your language, that's finally when it starts to hit in for your audience. So please do that. Find your language and repeat it. The glamorous metaphor is another one which I think you should very much use if you can find one. A client of mine many years ago came up with, she's a diversity specialist, and she came up with the idea of women within companies often feeling like they were the equivalent of a fish trying to climb a tree, climbing the corporate ladder. And now every time she's written a book specifically around that metaphor, and every time that she speaks, people at conferences refer back to her metaphor and build on it. So it's not only memorable, but metaphors have the great capacity of being accessible to other people, so they can repeat, pass on, and add to and make their own your metaphor. So if you've got a good metaphor, then please use it. Humor, we know that humor sells, particularly in Britain. We know that if you laugh, you've got the attention of the audience, the endorphins flow. Endorphins, I believe, aid learning and memory retention. So it's bringing your flavor of humor as opposed to awkward moments of stilted jokes that are punchline humor. Find your funny. And you can see again from Ken Robinson's talk that humor has such a capacity to draw people towards topics that otherwise they wouldn't be interested in. And then the final little thought for you is around bold props. So Hans Rosling, bless him, was the master of using props to bring data alive, if you've seen him on his TED Talk. So population statistics using boxes from IKEA. Instead of automatically going to the PowerPoint image, if you can bring something physical into the space where your audience are, like, I don't know, a pineapple. They're going to remember the pineapple that's physically there more than they're going to remember the pineapple picture on stage. So maybe combine your prop with your metaphor. And if you can shape your entire talk around that, I don't know, you could become pineapple woman or man. And that's really a great way to connect people to your ideas. Carol's asked, can you give an example of language? Yeah, I gave one which was the people don't buy people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Another one is a client of mine who is a neurodiversity advocate, and she probably said about 15 times in her talk, I'm not difficult, I'm different. And each time she said it, she added a little bit of extra on or changed the expression of it. So it wasn't just simply repetition. But when I told her to say it way more, she thought I was crazy. But afterwards, she realized the power of repeating and deepening the message, because people said to her afterwards, oh, your message was, I'm not difficult, I'm different, isn't it? And they could talk about her and pass her on. So yeah, a few examples for you there. Whew. So that's the second section. And then the third and final section is around showing your personality. So once you've got your idea worth spreading, you've shaped it into a journey, you've added some color with some of those really memorable elements, it's really possible to throw away your talk by not giving it enough personality or by trying to be somebody you're not. Those of us who are long-suffering Brits will have, we'll remember that we've got a string of former prime ministers who were just trying to be someone else, like Gordon Brown trying to be Tony Blair with his awkward smiles, and Theresa May, bless her, just really struggling with the whole public speaking thing. My theory is that was because they were really afraid just to show themselves, their personality. And if I was working with Theresa May, I'd give her a big cuddle, I'd tell her how brilliant she is, And then I'd get her to kind of own her own geekiness and dorkiness and kind of Mr. Bean-likeness, and love that rather than trying to put on some kind of mask. So I'm all up for people having super, super different personalities, but we must use the richness of your personality, whether you're super geeky, in which case own it, get passionate about that, or whether you're super heartfelt or powerful and commanding in the way that you speak. Your personality is what we're interested in. Just to bring that alive for you, here I work a lot with ladies, so these are 6 ladies that I've been working with over the years, and all really different personalities. So I'll pick on a couple of them for you here. This is Helen Needham, who's the one who had the "I'm not difficult, I'm different" refrain in her talk that she developed with me. She's autistic and highly socially anxious, and yet when she steps onto stage, she's so funny, and you should watch her TED talk and also the talk that she gave at the House of Commons with my work. Funny, insightful, and brilliant, compared with Lou, who's also funny and insightful and brilliant, but what she brings to the stage is this kind of warmth and almost spiritual power. You can see from the way she uses her hands, just real richness and warmth. Ugo here, who's managing director at Accenture, she, as we were working together, found her Nigerian roots and no longer wanted to push them away. She brought them right into the center of her style as a leader and as a speaker. And you should see the sachet and the power and the potency that she brings to her speaking. It's really unreal. This talk that she gave on color brave conversations here, and it's online again, really, really powerful. And I'd say a great example of someone stepping into the full force of their character. Here we have Susan. Susan Rettick. She's one of my team in the US. She tragically lost her husband. He was part of the 9/11 attacks and died that day. And her TED talk is talking about that. And she manages to bring the vulnerability and the intense emotional power of that story across with a real sense of respect and honor. So I think that's just an incredible, inspiring example of someone who can express themselves with full vulnerability and stay really in command of themselves. Claire Mason, Man Bites Dog, brilliant brain. Like I rarely see brain boxers like her who can communicate with such warmth and power. And then this is Young Mei Uri, who went on from doing our work to actually put on a one-woman West End show because her style was so dramatic and so alive and so charismatic. Now, each one of these ladies has a different style. You'll have a different style as well. The important thing is to develop your own style and your confidence in expressing yourself. That's, I think, what makes a huge difference between talks that are remembered and passed on versus ones that aren't. This is not about being smart or pretending to be somebody else. This is about you being fully yourself and getting the confidence and support that you need to claim that version of you. And by the way, by fully being yourself, I don't mean I'm absolutely terrified and don't want to do this, so I'm not going to. That's not what I mean. What I mean is you're at your best when you're sat around a table with your best friends or wherever it is that you feel most alive. How do you communicate there? What comes out in your personality there? That's what I want to see up on stage. Is there a list of these women somewhere that I can watch their talks? Most of these ladies are on our wall of women, but I can send, so that's a web link on the Ginger website, but maybe Katie, you can pull that out. But we can send around each of these talks in the follow-up email, and we'll do that. Okay, time is pressing, so I'm going to get to the last few pieces. This is a question for you to ponder just off the back of what I've said before. When you feel most at ease, how do you behave? And I want you to write down that question and think on it for yourself and see the degree to which you can bring those elements of your character into your public speaking. Okay. So, final section this afternoon. how to start on your TED style talk. Got a little model for you here. Oh, I meant for this all to pop up one at a time. What a disaster. Sorry for the excess of information all in one go. This is our little model of how to extend your impact as much as possible. So focus with me on one step at a time and I'll talk through each. The first step for you is to get clear. So knowing your message, and I can just see a question from Amy here. Will you take us through the crucial bit of unpicking the many thoughts to get to the one idea we're sharing? I've got about 5 minutes left on this call, so no, not today, Amy, but in a few minutes I'll tell you how you can work together more with us to do that. So the first step is know your message. If you don't know your message, don't write your talk. Like, really focus on identifying what your message is. Step 2, resonance. Connect it to the audience's problem. That's what we were saying before about the way that you shape your talk. Then you've already got a big chunk of your talk designed and developed. Step 3, level 3 of your impact is being memorable. So be bold. You know, what can you do or say to that is unusual to highlight your message? And then step 4 is being brave and speaking it out with full force. Now, this is everything that I've been talking about this afternoon, but just put in a slightly different way, because each level that I've gone through today is your opportunity to amplify your impact and to spread the word more effectively about the work that you're trying to represent. If you don't know what you're trying to communicate, you're going to end up with kind of guff, like a hot air, an idea that might seem compelling to people, but they don't know what the substance of it is, and they can't use it, and they can't buy it, and they can't pass it on effectively. So really making sure that your idea has substance at the heart of it, that you're intentional about what you want to say, and from there, the rest flows comparatively naturally. I hope that will make sense to you. And just going to spend the last couple of minutes giving you some indications on how you might take this work forward with Ginger and beyond. Back to our leaders that we talked about at the beginning. These are just one example of the well-worn pathway that we now have within Ginger around the TED style speaker training that we do. A lot of that work is within companies, but we have some ways to engage from an individual perspective, and I'll just run through some of those now for you. So, depending on which area you want to work on, the idea, maybe your body language, or a piece on your structure, if you want to work one-to-one, or if you want to work on something for your team, we've got different offerings for you. The idea, so this is to you, Amy. We have a 1-month process we call the Vision Hunt. Some of you on the line have already done this. This is specifically, sorry gents, this is specifically for female leaders at the moment if you want to work directly with me. It's one of a very few set of opportunities that people have to work with me personally. And we also have the possibility to do this in small groups with other people, and that would include the gentlemen. But personally, I work with female leaders only at this moment. So that's a 1-month process to really luxuriate in answering the question, what is it that I want? What is my idea? What is my thought leadership? And how can I come up with that one simple concept that's worth spreading? That's what that process is for. We have a series, well, a couple of different 1-day public courses for those of you who are either interested in body language and vocal, like presence and impact training. That's our Foundations of Excellent Public Speaking training. And we also this year have a new 1-day program starting on the basics of structure. So if you want to go into more detail about the hero's journey structure that we just showed you, that would be the place for you to go to. Katie will share the links for these in the follow-up email as well. We have personally designed, luxurious and beautiful one-to-one preparation and coaching, particularly for those of you who have got a talk coming up that you think, I really don't want to screw this up, let me get some time. Whether that's just 1 hour to bounce ideas around, or whether it's a full process of getting it together from scratch, we can design a package for you. I'd just say that anytime I have a big talk come up, I've always got someone in my team that I'll paid to go to, because I know how much value that adds, and it's a few £100, and it adds way more for me in terms of the business value for that speaking opportunity. And then finally, and crucially from my side, if your company would benefit from some of these concepts, I would love your championing and your introductions into your company. As I say, we're based in the UK and the US. We do a lot of this work for all sorts of different industries. We've got plenty of case studies I can share with you another time. But we have a really well-worn pathway of a 3 or 4 month TED-style speaker training package that we are ready and available to deliver whenever people need it. So if you have a team that you think would benefit, then give me a shout, and we'd love to talk to you some more. Woo! I know we are now at time or slightly over, but I really hope that you have had a fantastic session. If you've got any questions, I can answer a couple for a few minutes, but if you have to dash, then you're most welcome to. So I know that Meg and Christina, who else it has to disappear, but it looks like everyone's saying thank you. So you're very, very welcome. Have a fantastic weekend all. And if you have other questions that you want to chip me over by email, you're really welcome. We will share all of the details with you via email. Please spread the word about what we do at Ginger, and have a fantastic weekend, and good luck with your public speaking and beyond. Take care all, and bye-bye.